Welcome to the Purdue University Dining and Catering Safety Training. This training will cover hazard communication in GHS, personal protective equipment, bloodborne pathogens, the respiratory protection program, lockout tagout, general kitchen safety, and freight elevator training. The first section will be the Hazard Communication Standard. OSHA stands for Occupational Safety and Health Administration and is the governing body that sets regulations for the workplace in the United States. OSHA has adopted the standard set by the United Nations called the Globally Harmonized System of Classification and Labeling of Chemicals, or GHS. The GHS system has defined how chemical manufacturers should classify their chemicals, how they should be labeled, and how safety data sheets, or SDS, should be constructed. As part of the Hazard Communication Standard, employees have the right to know the hazardous chemicals they may be exposed to while working. A safety data sheet binder contains documents of all the chemicals used in each individual operation. Make sure to refer to the safety data sheet for more information than the label of a chemical provides. Each SDS sheet has 16 sections. The first section, titled Identification, contains a product along with its contact information. The second section, Hazard Identification, describes the chemical and hazard warning information. The third section, Composition, contains a list of all the ingredients in the chemical. The fourth section, titled First Aid Measures, describes the immediate action that should be taken in case of a personal injury. The fifth section is the firefighting measure, detailing the equipment that we should use in case of a fire. The sixth section, accidental release measure, contains the cleaning procedures for an accidental spill. The seventh section, handling and storage, involves information about safe handling and storage conditions. The eighth section, exposure controls and personal protection, entails information for personal protection measures taken to minimize exposure. Section 9 describes both the physical and chemical properties of the chemical. Section 10, Stability and Reactivity, describes conditions of materials that should be avoided. Section 11 is about the toxicology of the chemical. The 12th section, Ecological Information, discusses potential environmental harm. The 13th section elaborates on proper disposal procedures. Section 14 provides classification for shipping and transportation. The 15th section is Regulation, describing additional parameters set by other regulatory agencies. The final section is reserved for other information, including the NFPA label. Be sure that all sections are listed. If not, notify your supervisor. Now that you understand SDS, you must also learn how to properly label chemicals.
Students, this is your chef de cuisine. He is responsible for all of the chemicals, all of the food, and all of the production inside this kitchen. If you ever have a question to ask about chemicals, he is the right person to go to.
That's right, because chemicals can be confusing, so it's important to ask first. The first step in chemical safety is to make sure all chemicals are labeled correctly. If you happen to find a bottle that is unlabeled, do not use it and notify a supervisor immediately so that it can be discarded properly.
That's right, Chef. This is very important, students. Even if you think you know what's inside an unlabeled bottle, never use it. Remember, no label, no use.
Captain Safety, take 2, no label, no use.
Yeah. Captain Safety, y'all. 2012. And here we go. No label, no use. So you won't be confused with the chemicals you use. No label, no use. Don't forget now. No label, no use. No use. So you won't be confused with the chemicals you use. No label, no use. No use. No label, no use. So you won't be confused with the chemicals you use. No label, no use. Don't forget now.
All chemicals need to be labeled properly no matter what container they are in. Water is the only exception to the rule, but the word water must be somewhere on the bottle. Oasis 137, an orange liquid, is used in many dining operations. As you can tell, the chemical labels are different. This is because the container on the left is the primary container and contains a high concentration of Oasis 137. The bottle on the right is a diluted solution and has a secondary label. The secondary label should contain the chemical name and the hazard pictogram. The new chemical label will look like this one. The hazard signal word identifies a possible hazard associated with the chemical. The hazard pictogram is the diamond with the picture inside. The precautionary statement tells you what you should be doing in order to reduce the possible hazard of the product. The supplier information tells you who the chemical was made by. You normally won't be using a chemical in its original package. This is where the secondary labeling comes into play. It is extremely important to include the name of the chemical on all secondary containers used to hold cleaning products. There will be 9 GHS pictograms included with the new chemical labels. Each chemical will have at least one pictogram to convey the potential hazard associated with it. The common ones you may encounter are a flame for flammable, gas cylinder for gases under pressure, 2 dripping flasks for corrosion, and then an exclamation point for acute irritants. The National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, has created a label that chemical companies use in order to communicate hazards to the public. The blue diamond represents health, red represents fire, yellow represents reactivity, however the white diamond identifies a specific hazard. A few examples are water reactiveness, oxidizers, or corrosiveness. The levels of concern range from 0 to 4, with 4 being the highest level of concern. Purdue is required to keep chemical inventories and maintain safety data sheets. Service records of chemicals need to be held for 30 years. The GHS guidelines will be used for primary label information. Purdue will be using the optional NFPA label in addition to a secondary label.
Next, we will be learning about personal protective equipment, or PPE. PPE is a term used for equipment worn to reduce the risk of exposure from chemicals or injuries while at work. Hazard assessments have been done to determine what equipment and chemicals require PPE. You will soon review the hazard assessments for your dining operation. Learn where the PPE is stored and become familiar with all the tasks that involve PPE. If there is no functioning PPE available, then avoid the task to ensure safety. PPE must always be worn appropriately. If PPE is defective, please notify your supervisor. If you fail to wear PPE correctly, you may be subject to disciplinary action. One type of PPE is for working with sharp objects. Tasks that may cause lacerations are cleaning a food processor, knives, or a pulper. For protection, a cut-resistant glove should be worn with a food-safe glove over it. The next source of PPE prevents burns. Sources of injury can be steamers, flat-top grills, char grills, tilt skillets, taking hot pans out of the oven, recycling grease, and cleaning a deep fryer. PPE options for these tasks are an apron, heat-resistant gloves, hot pads, and heat sleeves. PPE also needs to be worn for chemical hazards. These instances normally occur during operations such as cleaning external exhaust hoods, cleaning refrigeration units using stainless steel cleaner, or while cleaning or performing maintenance on a dish machine. The PPE for chemical hazards range from splash goggles to face shields and latex or nitrile gloves. After chemical use, remember to wash hands and arms well. The last hazard that requires PPE is electrical hazards. The PPE should only be worn by authorized employees who have been trained to use the equipment. The dangers around high voltage units are electric sparks and loud noises due to an arc flash. The PPE is safety goggles, hearing protection, leather gloves, and an apron.
The next section contains information about bloodborne pathogens. Bloodborne pathogen protection prevents being infected with diseases such as hepatitis B, C, and HIV. Bloodborne pathogens must enter your bloodstream for you to become infected. Being aware of these opportunities reduces the chance of transmission. These opportunities can be any type of broken skin, including sunburn or blisters. Bloodborne pathogens can also be transmitted through open areas of the body, such as eyes, nose, and mouth. Exposure opportunities in the kitchen include sharp objects such as knives, can lids, and scrapers. If these objects are contaminated by someone else's blood when they cut you, you could be susceptible to infection. When cleaning up a bodily fluid spill, always use universal precautions. These precautions assume that any leaked bodily fluids are infectious and contain bloodborne pathogens. Before beginning the cleanup of a bodily fluid spill, make sure that you are wearing proper PPE. For bodily fluid cleanup, the PPE is disposable gloves and splash-proof goggles. Then, check to see if any sharp objects are in the area. If a sharp object exists, remove them with a broom and a dustpan. Then, place the contaminated sharp objects in the biohazard bag. Circle and saturate the area with a disinfectant afterwards. Finally, wipe up the solution with a paper or cloth towel and dispose of it into the biohazard bag. Make sure to reapply disinfectant, but this time let it air dry. Be sure to enclose all contaminated materials, including your gloves, in a biohazard bag. Ask a supervisor how to properly dispose of the biohazard bag. Before and after cleaning up the spill, make sure to properly wash your hands. You must always wash your hands by vigorously lathering and scrubbing your hands for 15 seconds. Rinse your hands for at least 10 seconds. Watch this video for a complete demonstration.
Germs everywhere. I need to defend myself. I'm gonna get it right. We're gonna get it right. Wash our hands. No more germs in sight. Health defense. We're gonna get it right. Wash our hands. No more germs in sight. Health defense. Step number one. Wet your hands. Up to your wrist. Use warm water. Step number two. Apply the soap. Not too much. Not too little. Step number three. Rub your fingers. Thumbs and palms. And in between. Step number four. Scrub those hands. And fingertips. Scrub. Step number five. Rub those thumbs. All the way. Rub. Step number six. Rinse your hands. Rinse your hands. Rinse your hands. Step number seven. Use paper towels to dry your hands. Use paper towels. Step number 8. Dry between those fingers and under those nails.
If you accidentally cut yourself, immediately wash the affected area with soap and water. Then grab a paper towel and apply pressure. Make sure to report the accident to supervisor. Whenever an accident occurs, fill out an injury report form with your supervisor and notify them if you feel the need to have medical follow-up. Now we'll be discussing lockout-tagout. Lockout-tagout is a safety procedure that ensures the machine is completely shut off before maintenance or a cleaning takes place so that the machine can't be turned on accidentally. Lockout-tagout is performed on anything that has an energy isolating device, like the dish machines and pulpers. The lockout-tagout process begins with attaching a tag to the hasp to indicate that the machine is not in operation. Next, attach the hasp to the energy isolating device. Finally, attach the lock to the hasp to prevent machine operation. This is a tag used in the lockout-tagout process. The front of the tag has the name of the authorized employee who performed the action and the date. The back of the tag contains the space for additional comments. An authorized employee is a person who implements a lockout-tagout procedure on equipment. Authorized employees include student supervisors, full-time staff, and administrators. All other student employees fall under the category of affected employees and will not be performing the lockout-tagout. Affected employees have 3 tasks during the lockout-tagout process. The first is to be aware of the situation at hand. The second is to ensure that no one tries to turn on the machine. The third is to inform other coworkers that lockout-tagout is occurring.
We will now briefly discuss the Respiratory Protection Program. If you choose to use a respirator while working, Purdue requires you to sign the respiratory protection document provided by your supervisor. Each location has respirators available. Before using, inspect the respirator for dirt or damage. Make sure that it fits properly before beginning to work and dispose of it in the trash can after work. General safety tips to always keep in mind. Always be aware of your surroundings. Wear proper PPE for each task based off of the hazard assessments. Always read the label of cleaning supplies prior to use, know the proper use of cleaning equipment, and never be afraid to ask questions.
There are many injuries that can happen in the kitchen. Common injuries tend to occur when there are accident opportunities. Preventing these opportunities is the easiest way to reduce the number of injuries. These opportunities include slippery floors, sharp objects, hot surfaces, heavy equipment, awkwardly sized packages, and tight spaces. There are many simple fixes to reduce the opportunity for injuries. Soapy water, grease, oil, and other liquids that reduce traction in kitchens create slippery conditions and pose a danger to everyone. Prevent slips by cleaning up spills immediately, especially on tile floors. Also, slip-resistant shoes and rubber mats can be used as precautionary measures to increase traction. To reduce the chances of tripping, make sure all mats are flat and not bunched up. Moving boxes out of the way of walkways is another way to reduce trip hazards. Practicing correct lifting procedures can help reduce injuries. Have your feet set apart shoulder width. Your knees should be bent while beginning to lift. This is to prevent arching your back, which can lead to back injuries. Your arms should keep the load nearest to the center of gravity as possible. Use your palms and roots of your fingers to grasp the edge and have your hands facing each other. Always keep your chin out and up and shoulders back. Before beginning to walk, stand up straight. When lifting the weight, keep your back straight. Your back should be at most 10 to 20 degrees from straight. Arching your back leads to using weak back muscles instead of strong leg and arm muscles. A kitchen essential that we need to talk about is knives. High quality sharp knives are much safer than cheap, dull knives. Sharp knives slide easily through what you're cutting with little force required. If a knife is dull, you have to use more force to cut, which can result in harming yourself. When you're using a knife, don't cut with the edge facing you or your fingers. If you slip, the blade will keep going towards you. Always pay attention to where the sharp edge of the blade is pointing. If you drop a knife, stand back and let it fall. Do not try and catch it. This sounds very basic, but your instincts will tell you to use to catch it. That's an easy way to get hurt. Don't store knives loose in a drawer because they will become dull and someone is more likely to get cut if they are not organized. Knives should be washed separate from other utensils. Knives soaking in soapy water cannot be seen and can lead to injuries, but running knives through this machine will make them dull. To clean the knife, wipe it from the hilt to the point, allow it to dry, and then store it correctly. To correctly carry a knife while walking, hold it at your side with the point facing the ground. Deep fryers have several dangerous traits. No liquid besides cooking oil should be near the fryers. If it were spilled into the oil, it would turn to steam instantly and could violently spray hot oil in all directions. Also, be careful when adding food to the fryers, because even frozen foods can have water or pockets of liquid on the outside, which can cause hot oil to bubble. Steam is invisible and very dangerous. Steam is often thought of as a cloud of vapor that comes out of a teapot. The visible part of the steam has cooled down to below the boiling point of water. The very dangerous part of the steam is the nearly invisible water vapor that is above the boiling point of water. It can be highly pressurized and move very fast. It is almost invisible as it escapes confinement from pressure steamers, hot wells, combi ovens, and coppers. Other places in the kitchen that can lead to burns are grills, pizza ovens, pans, ovens, hot wells, and wet hot pads. When uncovering hot wells, be sure to open the cover away from yourself if possible. If there's somebody at the counter, allow the steam to come out of the side while standing as far away as possible. Use hot pads to move heated items and leave hot pads on an object to communicate that it is still hot. When opening combi and oven doors, stand away from the door opening so the steam can escape. Finally, here are general tips for kitchen safety. Pay attention, slow down, use the right equipment to clean as you go, get help if you need it, and always report injuries to a supervisor.
While on a freight elevator, use the hold door switch to keep the doors in the open position for an extended period of time. Use the door open or door stop button to halt or reverse the door cycle. Reversal is not immediate and the doors may still close from the original inertia. Even when the car gate and car door are closed, there's a gap. Make sure no materials or body parts project beyond the vertical line of the gate. You can use the handle if the door does not work. The yellow pad is a safety edge. When there is contact, it will cause reversal.